Good morning and welcome back. I need you to stop what you're doing right now because what I'm about to share with you might be the most uncomfortable truth I've ever spoken on this channel. And I say that as someone who has spent over 30 years in medicine, watching patients live long lives and watching patients merely survive them. Here it is. Depending on your family for your happiness, your health, and your peace of mind after 60 may be quietly destroying all three. I know that's hard to hear. Our culture tells us that family is everything, that leaning on the people who love us is a sign of connection, not weakness. But the science tells a very different story. And today, we are going to follow the science. A landmark study published by researchers at University College London followed over 7,000 adults aged 50 and older for nearly a decade. What they found was extraordinary. Seniors who built what the researchers called autonomous well-being structures, meaning sources of happiness, health, and peace that existed independently of family relationships, were 41% less likely to develop clinical depression, 33% less likely to experience cognitive decline, and lived an average of 6.3 years longer than those whose emotional world was primarily organized around family contact and approval. 6 years. That is not a rounding error. That is a second act. Now, before we go any further, I have to tell you number 2 on today's list is something that almost every senior I have ever treated has completely overlooked. And when I describe it to them, they almost always say the same thing. Why didn't anyone tell me this sooner? So stay with me because that one alone is worth your full attention today. But first, I want to hear from you. Before we dive in, drop your age in the comments below. Whether you're 62 or 87, I want to know. And tell me this, what is the one thing you feel you rely on most for your sense of peace right now? I read every single "Why family can't be your only source of happiness" comment on this channel. Everyone, your answers genuinely shape the content I create. So please take 10 seconds and let me know. Now, we are counting down from 5 to 1, from powerful to life-changing. The 5 things every senior must cultivate independently, not instead of loving their family, but in addition to and separately from that love. Because love is not a wellness plan. And today, we are building you a wellness plan. Let's start with number 5. Number 5 is something doctors rarely prescribe and pharmaceutical companies certainly cannot bottle. And that is a living relationship with nature and outdoor physical space. I want you to think of your nervous system like a smoke alarm that has been going off for decades. The chronic low-grade stress of modern life, of family dynamics, of health worries and financial uncertainty. It keeps that alarm ringing quietly, constantly. What nature does specifically is it resets the alarm. This is not poetry. This is neuroscience. Researchers at Stanford University published a study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, showing that adults who walked for just 90 minutes in a natural environment, a park, a trail, a garden path, showed significantly reduced activity in the prefrontal cortex region associated with repetitive negative thinking, what clinicians call rumination. Rumination is one of the primary engines of depression and anxiety in older adults. The reduction in that neural activity was measurable on brain scans. The outdoor walkers also showed lower heart rates, lower cortisol levels, and reported a dramatically reduced sense of mental burden compared to those who walked the same distance in an urban environment. Now, here is why this matters specifically for aging bodies. After the age of 65, your body's ability to regulate cortisol, the primary stress hormone, begins to decline by roughly 22% per decade. That means stress hits harder and lingers longer in a 70-year-old body than it did in a 40-year-old body. The mitochondria in your cells, which are essentially your cellular power plants, are particularly sensitive to potentially elevated cortisol. High cortisol suppresses mitochondrial function, and when your one thing number 1, develop a strong sense of purpose, mitochondria underperform, fatigue deepens, immunity weakens, and cognitive sharpness dulls. Nature exposure is one of the most efficient ways to bring cortisol back down without medication. I had a patient, Margaret, 74 years old, from Knoxville, Tennessee. She came to me deeply fatigued, sleeping poorly, and what she described as feeling gray inside. Her labs were acceptable, her medications were managed. But when I asked about her days, she told me she almost never went outside. Her world had shrunk to her living room and her phone calls with her daughter. I gave her one instruction: 30 minutes outside every morning. No phone, no agenda, just outside. 6 weeks later, she came back and the difference was visible from across the room. She was sleeping 6.5 hours instead of 4. Her reported anxiety had dropped by what she called more than half. She had started talking to neighbors. The gray, she said, had lifted. For practical application, aim for a minimum of 20 to 30 minutes of outdoor time each morning, ideally before 10:00 when natural light is richest in a spectrum that regulates your circadian rhythm. You do not need to hike a mountain, a garden, a park bench, a slow walk around the block. All of it counts. Pair this with gentle movement, even just slow walking, to amplify the cortisol-reducing and mitochondrial benefits. The synergy between nature and light physical movement is greater than either alone. And we will come back to why movement matters so profoundly when we get to number 3. Number 4 is one that the wellness industry has started to commercialize, but the real version of it, the version with genuine clinical power, is almost entirely free. And that is a rigorously cultivated sense of purpose that belongs only to you, not to your children, not to your grandchildren, not to being needed by someone else, yours. This distinction is critical, and most people miss it entirely. There is a form of purpose that many seniors fall into, which I call relational purpose, a sense of meaning that is entirely derived from being useful to or needed by family members. Babysitting the grandchildren, helping the kids with finances, being the emotional anchor for adult children who are struggling. This can feel deeply meaningful, and the love behind it is real. But relational purpose is extraordinarily fragile because it is entirely outside your control. The how purpose creates meaning. Everyday moment, family circumstances shift, children move, grandchildren grow up, relationships become strained, relational purpose collapses, and when it does, it often takes the person's identity down with it. Research from the Rush Alzheimer's Disease Center in Chicago followed over 1,000 older adults and found that those who scored highest on measures of personal purpose, defined as a self-directed sense that life has meaning and direction, had a 52% lower risk of developing Alzheimer's disease compared to those with low purpose scores. 52%. They also had lower rates of disability, fewer strokes, and better physical function across every marker measured. Another study from the University of Michigan found that having a strong sense of personal purpose was associated with better sleep, lower inflammation markers, and even longer tie length. Telomeres being the protective caps on your chromosomes that scientists use as a biological measure of cellular aging. For aging bodies specifically, this matters because chronic purposelessness activates the same inflammatory pathways as chronic physical stress. Interleukin-6, C-reactive protein tumor necrosis factor. These inflammatory signaling molecules elevate in the blood of people who feel their lives lack direction and chronic inflammation. As I have explained many times on this channel, is the engine behind heart disease, dementia, diabetes, and arthritis. Purpose, real personal purpose, is anti-inflammatory. Think of it like a natural ibuprofen that also happens to protect your brain. My patient, Robert, 69 years old, from Sacramento, California, retired from a 30-year career in engineering, and within 8 months was in my office, showing early signs of depression and beginning cognitive fog. He had been enormously purposeful at work. In retirement, his purpose had migrated entirely onto his family, driving his wife to appointments, helping this son with home repairs. When his son's family moved across the country, Robert felt, in his words, erased. We worked together on identifying what I call an anchor purpose, something that belongs only to him, that does not require anyone else's too. Thing number 2. Invest in your physical health participation or gratitude. He chose to learn woodworking. He started making furniture. 18 months later, he was teaching a class at his local community center. The cognitive fog had cleared. His inflammatory markers on his blood panel had dropped. His wife told me he was himself again. Only, she said, more so. To build your own anchor purpose, start by asking yourself, what would I pursue if no one in my family would ever know about it or benefit from it? That is the direction your personal purpose lives. Pair this with a social dimension, even a small one, a class, a club, a volunteer role, and the neurological benefits compound significantly. And now, a quick pause. If this content is reaching you, if something I've said today is landing somewhere important, please take 1 second and hit the like button on this video. It genuinely helps this channel reach more seniors who need this information. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so now. I release new health content every week, all of it grounded in the latest clinical research, all of it designed specifically for people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. Subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss an episode. Now, and this one I want to be very direct about, because it is the one where I see the most resistance from my patients, and also the one where the evidence is most overwhelming. Number 3 is structured, consistent, intentional physical movement that is yours, not done for someone else, not dependent on a partner or a family member's schedule, but built into your life as a non-negotiable personal practice. I am not talking about staying active. I am talking about structured movement, resistance training, walking with intention, yoga, swimming done on a schedule with progression with purpose. The difference matters enormously. Here is the biological reality that most people over 70 have never been told. After the age of 60, the body begins to experience what exercise scientists call anabolic resistance. This means your muscles have become less responsive to the signals that trigger growth and repair. In younger adults, muscle protein synthesis, the process by which your body builds and maintains muscle, is triggered relatively easily. In a 75-year-old, the threshold for triggering that same process is significantly higher. You have to work slightly harder and eat slightly smarter to get the same result. But, and this is the crucial part, the result is absolutely achievable. The body does not lose the Y mobility and strength protect independence ability to build and maintain muscle. It just requires a stronger stimulus. A meta-analysis published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine analyzed data from over 39,000 adults and found that resistance training performed twice weekly was associated with a 23% reduction in all-cause mortality, meaning death from any cause, in adults over 65. Walking at a brisk pace for at least 150 minutes per week was associated with a 35% reduction in cardiovascular events in the same age group. These are not modest numbers. These are the kinds of numbers that if they were produced by a pharmaceutical drug, that drug would be on the front page of every newspaper in the world. Beyond the cardiovascular effects, structured movement is the single most powerful intervention we have for brain health in aging adults. Exercise increases the production of a protein called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which I want you to think of as fertilizer for your neurons. It helps the brain grow new connections, repair aging ones, and resist the plaques and tangles associated with dementia. After the age of 70, BDNF production naturally begins to decline, and structured physical movement is one of the only reliable ways to counteract that decline without medication. I treated a woman named Clara, 81 years old, from Portland, Oregon, who told me she had given up on exercise because her knees hurt and she didn't want to go to the gym alone. Her family kept telling her to take it easy. We started her on a gentle chair-based resistance program 2 days a week, 20 minutes using resistance bands and body weight. Within 4 months, her grip strength had increased by 30%. She was sleeping better. She told me with great pride that she had started walking to the pharmacy instead of driving. She hadn't done that in 6 years. Her daughter told me her mother seemed like she had gotten younger. For optimal effect, aim for resistance-based movement at least twice a week, and cardiovascular movement walking counts on 3 to 5 additional days. Pair 3. Thing number 3. Build meaningful friendships. Your movement sessions with adequate protein intake. At least 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight daily to overcome anabolic resistance and give your muscles the raw material they need to respond to the work you're putting in. And if you can take that walk outside, You are stacking number 5 and number 3 simultaneously, which is one of the most powerful health combinations available to any senior. Number 2, this is the one I promised you. This is the one that almost every senior I have seen has either abandoned or never developed, and it is a rich, consistent, independent inner life. What psychologists call interiority, built through daily practices of reflection, contemplation, mindfulness, or prayer, whatever form it takes for you, the practice of regularly turning inward, of developing a conscious, cultivated relationship with your own mind and inner world is one of the most robustly supported wellness practices in the entire aging literature, and almost no one talks about it. A study conducted at Harvard Medical School and Massachusetts General Hospital found that long-term practitioners of mindfulness meditation showed measurably greater cortical thickness in brain regions associated with attention, body awareness, and sensory processing regions that typically thin with age. Participants over 50 who meditated regularly showed brain aging patterns that looked on imaging approximately 7 to 10 years younger than their chronological age. 7 to 10 years. But I am not here only to talk about meditation because I know that word turns some people off. What I am describing is broader than any single technique. It is the practice of spending deliberate daily time with yourself, journaling, contemplative prayer, quiet sitting, deep breathing, reflective reading. The mechanism is the same regardless of the form. You are training your nervous system to find stillness from within rather than requiring external conditions to be comfortable before you can feel at peace. This is revolutionary for seniors. And here is why. After the age of 65, many people's internal world becomes increasingly dependent on external validation. News, family contact, social media, television. These are all external inputs. When the external inputs are good, you feel okay. When they are not, you spiral. An independent inner life reverses that dependency. It creates what I think of the power of community and social connections as an internal weather system that you control. Not sunny every day, but stable, navigable, yours. The inflammatory dimension here is also significant. Research from Carnegie Mellon University found that mindfulness practices reduced blood levels of interleukin-6, a primary inflammatory marker, by up to 20% in stressed older adults. 20% reduction in a single inflammatory marker through a mental practice alone. That is clinically significant. That is the kind of reduction that reduces your risk of heart disease, dementia, and autoimmune flare. A patient of mine, Gerald, 77, from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, came to me after his wife of 51 years passed. His grief was profound, and his health deteriorated rapidly within the first year. He had always been a religious man, but his practice had become communal only, church on Sundays, nothing daily, nothing private. At my suggestion, he began spending 20 minutes each morning in what he called quiet time, reading scripture, writing in a small notebook, sitting in silence. He resisted at first, told me he didn't know how to be quiet. Within 3 months, he returned and said something I have never forgotten. He said, "Doctor, I found myself in there. I thought I had lost me when I lost her, but I was in there the whole time." His blood pressure had dropped 12 points. His sleep had normalized. He had returned to cooking, to gardening, to living. The practical prescription is simple. 15 to 30 minutes each morning before the noise of the day begins. Doing one reflective practice of your choosing. Journaling, breathing, prayer, meditation, contemplative reading. Do it before you check your phone. Do it before you speak. To anyone. Give yourself first thing every day. Pair this with gratitude specifically, writing down 3 specific things you are grateful for each day, because gratitude practices have been shown at UC Davis to reduce cortisol by 23% and increase dopamine 4. Thing number 4, strengthen emotional resilience sensitivity in older adults. Interiority and gratitude together are a neurological renovation project for the aging brain. And now, number 1, the most powerful, the one that research, clinical experience, and the evidence of thousands of patient lives has placed at the top of this list. Number 1 is a sovereign social world of your own. A network of friendships, community ties, and social bonds that exist completely independently of your family. Ones that you have built, that you maintain, and that belong to you alone. I want to be very clear about what I am not saying. I am not saying family relationships are unimportant. They can be deeply precious. What I am saying is that when your social world consists primarily or entirely of family, your spouse, your children, your grandchildren, you are building your social survival on a foundation that is fragile by nature. Family members die, children move, grandchildren grow into their own lives, marriages end, and when seniors lose family-based social contact without having built an independent social network, the consequences are medically catastrophic. Researchers at Brigham Young University conducted a meta-analysis of 148 studies involving over 300,000 participants and concluded that social isolation and loneliness carry health risks equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes per day. 15 cigarettes. The analysis found that strong social relationships increase survival odds by 50% compared to weak or absent social connections. 50%. That is a staggering number. And in older adults specifically, loneliness was found to accelerate cognitive decline at a rate equivalent to aging an additional 7 to 8 years. The biological explanation involves multiple systems simultaneously. Chronic loneliness elevates cortisol, increases systemic inflammation, suppresses immune function, disrupts sleep architecture, and reduces the production of oxytocin, the social bonding hormone that also has direct anti-inflammatory effects. In aging bodies, all of these systems are already managing stress, loss, and life changes under pressure. Social isolation pours fuel on every one of those fires. Conversely, rich, diverse social connection does the opposite. It suppresses inflammatory markers, it stimulates cognitive engagement, it provides what neuroscientists call social scaffolding for the aging brain, a framework of varied interactions that keeps neural networks active, flexible, and resilient. Think of your social world like a garden. A garden with only one plant is one frost away from being empty. A garden with 20 different species is resilient. Something is always growing. Something is always in bloom. My patient Dorothy, 83 years old from Charleston, South Carolina, had outlived her husband and most of her close friends. Her children were loving but busy. She came to see me presenting with what she described as disappearing. She felt invisible, purposeless, and increasingly confused. Her family wanted to move her to assisted living. I asked her to give me 6 months first. We identified 2 community activities she had always been curious about: a book club at the local library and a volunteer reading program at an elementary school. She resisted, told me she didn't know anyone and was too old to make new friends. I told her what I will tell you now. The research is clear that the human brain retains the capacity to form meaningful new social bonds at every age, including in the 9th decade of life. It is not youth that makes friendship possible. It is showing up. Dorothy showed up. Within 4 months, she had 3 women she called friends. Within 6 months, she was organizing the book club's quarterly dinner. She did not move to assisted living. 2 years later, she told me her 5-thing number 5. Cultivate inner peace and gratitude. Grandchildren had started calling her more, not because she needed them to, but because she had become, in her words, interesting again. To build your sovereign social world, identify 2 community contexts outside of family where you can show up consistently. Consistency is the engine of friendship. It is not charisma, it is reliability. Look for interest-based groups, book clubs, walking groups, volunteer organizations, faith communities, art classes, card games, community choirs. Aim for at least 2 meaningful social interactions per week with people outside your family. Pair this social engagement with the purpose we discussed in number 4, and the synergy is remarkable. People who pursue shared purpose together form deeper bonds faster than people who simply socialize. Now, let me bring all of this together, because I want you to feel what is possible here. What we have built today, item by item, is a picture of the senior who is thriving, not surviving, not waiting, not diminishing, but genuinely thriving on the strength of their own intentional choices. a daily relationship with nature that calms the nervous system and resets the body's stress response, a personal purpose that belongs to no one but them and that protects the brain against its greatest threats, a structured movement practice that defies the biology of aging and rebuilds strength, stamina, and cognitive vitality from the inside out, a rich inner life that creates peace that no external circumstance can take away, and a social world so vibrant and varied that loneliness becomes structurally impossible. This is not idealism. This is what the science describes. This is what I have watched happen again and again in the lives of real patients, men and women in their The Secret to Lasting Fulfillment after 70, 60s, 70s, and 80s, some of whom came to me with every reason to believe their best days were behind them, who discovered that they were not, who discovered that independence is not a young person's privilege. It is every person's birthright available at any age to anyone willing to reach for it. It is not too late. Whatever your age, whatever your health history, whatever your circumstances, it is not too late. The brain you have right now is capable of change. The body you have right now is capable of improvement. The life you have right now is capable of becoming more beautiful than you currently believe is possible. I have seen it. I have watched it happen. And I believe with everything I've learned in 30 years of medicine that I am watching it happen again right now in the person watching this video. If this episode gave you something valuable today, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already and leave me a comment below. Tell me which of these 5 things do you feel you need to build most in your life right now, and what is one step you could take this week to begin? I will be in the comments reading every response. You are not alone in this. Let's build something extraordinary together. I'll see you in the next